Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today we have a very special guest all the way from Australia. Aly, welcome to the show.
Hi Jasper, welcome to you too. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. How's life in Australia?
Do you know what? We've had a little bit of rain in the last few days, but other than that, it's all nice and beautiful, and we need more tourists to come and visit.
Well, I've been to Australia once, and I had a pretty good time staying in the Surfers Paradise, and I went to Cairns, which is actually my favorite. Whereabouts in Australia are you?
So I'm in the Sydney CBD. I'm about a kilometre from where all the action takes place, so to speak.
Okay, so you're downtown Sydney.
Correct, yes.
Okay, great. So can you tell us how you heard about Airbnb and how did you get started with it?
Sure. My journey with Airbnb is a little strange, I guess. I was at a personal development seminar, and at that time I had quite a lot of my properties were rented long term, and in Australia they pay by the month. Well, that was the arrangement that I had with them, and at one stage I had about 3 or 4 apartments that had tenants living in them, and all of them at the same time just refused to pay their rent. So it was a bit stressful for me, and at one point I thought, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to be able to pay the mortgages? We took them to court, and unfortunately the court system in Australia doesn't favour the owners, favours the tenants, and I lost a lot of money in the process. And I was at this personal development seminar, like I said, and a good friend of mine said, oh, have you tried Airbnb? And I'm like, what? She goes, Airbnb. And I'm like, what? She goes, oh, look, it's a place. It's a place so you can put your apartments out for for the night, for the week, whatever, short term, and it's quite good, and you get really nice people. You can meet people from all over the world, and it's fantastic. You should try it. And I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I might as well try it. And I started with the property that we kicked one of them out literally that week. And I thought, okay, well, it was already a furnished apartment. I thought, okay, I will put it on Airbnb and see what happens. And I love the fact that Airbnb gives you a photographer to come and take professional photographs. So that was done really simply and really easy. And I put it on Airbnb, and within a week it was booked. And I was really happy with that. And I just added more properties as they became available. And within about 3 months, I literally had a full-time business from it, which was fantastic.
That's great. Let's go back to those long-term renters, because that sounds crazy. Like, how does somebody suddenly decide, hey, I'm not going to pay rent? I mean, what was the reason for that?
Well, basically, the reason was that, what I was told was that they, didn't have a job anymore, therefore they couldn't afford to pay the rent. So the laws in Australia, when you have a tenancy in place and you can't afford to pay the rent, unfortunately, is at least 2 weeks for them not to pay the rent before you can legally lodge a formal complaint for them to pay the rent. By that time, so they're already 2 weeks behind. By that time, that piece of paper that you can lodge at 2 weeks' time gives them another 2 weeks. So by then, they're already a month behind. And if they don't pay the rent up until then, you then lodge through it's called CTTT, which is the Consumer Tenancy Tribunal in Sydney. Every state is different though. And then you basically go to court. Well, it's like a court, but it's not really a court. And you you have two choices. You can either go into mediation, where you and the tenant comes to an agreement, comes to a payment agreement, or they decide for you. And we couldn't decide on an agreement, and they decided that they wanted the officer to decide on their fate, which the officer did. The officer ruled obviously in my favor for them to pay me, which they had agreed that they were going to. However, at the end of the day, it didn't happen because, again, they got given X amount more time to, I think it was about another 3 weeks for them to actually give me the full, the money that they owed me. In the end, they didn't. They just left. Literally, they disappeared off the face of the planet, and nobody could find them. And in the end, I lost out. So, yeah, sadly in Australia, I'm not sure if it's the same where you are or with other guests that you've spoken to, but here in Australia, unfortunately, the full-blown tenancy agreement between a landlord and a tenant doesn't favour the owner. It actually favours the tenant.
Yeah, it's the same in Holland, where I'm from. And this is actually one of the reasons that I started Airbnb as well. Not that I had any problems, but one thing that's a problem in Holland is that you can sign a 1-year lease, for example, but then if the person doesn't want to move out, it's very, very hard to get them out. So I was thinking, if I ever want to go back to Amsterdam and live in my own house, or if I want to sell the house, it may be a big problem with the renters.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you say this, because a lot of people that I've talked to who are thinking about doing Airbnb, they bring up the point that they think it's risky. They say, well, what if I don't get any guests? I won't be able to pay my mortgage. And
yeah, I've actually had personal conversations with my friends that have always dealt with flatmates.
Uh-huh.
And when I told them that I was going to go with Airbnb, I had the same. The first question was, what if nobody rents it, which is ridiculous, because you always have somebody renting it. The second thing I got, and I'm like, well, these people are travelers. What are they going to do? Go home through customs with a 55-inch TV on their backpack? Like, it's just ridiculous. What are they going to do? Take your underwear and your swimming costume? Like, I think in my opinion, it's just the not being educated. So you don't know what you don't know, and when you do know how it works, then it's totally different, and it's seen through totally different eyes. But at the beginning, I guess people are just scared of new things and of uncertainty, and they're easy to judge and they're quick to judge. And a lot of these times, their judgment is totally in a negative way. But as a result, it's people like you and I that are making money from it. Like I said, I run it as a lucrative business. It's a full-time business now. I've been doing it for almost 3 years, and I would not ever rent any way other than through Airbnb again. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. So what are the other sort of differences between Airbnb and long-term rental that makes you say that? Because I feel the same way. I see a lot of advantages for doing Airbnb, but what's the main differences in your opinion?
Well, for me, having been, like I said, burnt, I literally, I've been investing in real estate for the last 10 years, so I have a decent sized portfolio of 11 apartments, and to have 3 of them at the one time in the 1 month, not, to have the tenants not pay me rent, that really, really hit me, my bottom dollar. And here in Australia, if you don't pay your mortgage when it's due, it's kind of like you get a cross, against your name sort of thing. So it's a pretty risky, and it's a really bad thing to have against your name, your personal name, Mm-hmm. It impedes you in getting loans in the future. It impedes you in, even if your credit rating goes down, it impedes you from even getting a credit card. It's quite serious. So for me, the reason why I really love Airbnb and I believe so much in it, and for me, it's just the biggest safety net that ever could have, I don't know what I would do without Airbnb. It's just that it provides 100% security. So the difference between long-term and short-term is, long-term, you don't know if you're going to get the money or not. And like you, in Australia, it is similar. I mean, it doesn't happen often, and I'm lucky because being in the city, it's apartments. It's more, this kind of thing more happens in the sort of the suburbs. Places that you're looking at about an hour or 2 hours away from Sydney, they get squatters. So they'll go into a house. They'll either be renting there, or they get into a house and they just literally, you can't get them out. And it would take the sheriff, the courts, the police, and a really, really long time, during which, by the way, you don't get any money at all for your property before you can physically kick them out. So this is what I mean. The laws are just crazy when it comes to rentals, which is just ridiculous. Even as a landlord before, I never used the conventional real estate offices because I don't believe in their work, and most of them have no clue in terms of getting the highest amount of rent that they can possibly get for you. I mean, they work for you because you obviously pay them a commission to rent their property, but most of them don't have most of them, I guess, they just don't care. Nobody's really going to look after your place as good as you are. Nobody's going to I guess, even clean a place as good as you are. Nobody's going to do something as good as you are because you care about it. It's yours. It's your baby. You've taken, you've watched it born. You've watched it grow, and so forth. So for me, the biggest thing with Airbnb and between long term and short term is just the security of having that money paid up front, which is just awesome. Like I said, I run it as a business, so I do have a couple of extra trickles of income that comes as a result of that. So, for example, you've got a cleaning fee, obviously, which I like the way that I set how much that is. I like the fact that I set, my bond. I like the fact that I set, how many people I want in my place, if there are extra charges for an additional person or if there isn't. Like I said, I run it as a business, so for me, it's sort of similar to, I guess, a hotel in the sense that I have my guests check in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have my guests check out at 10 a.m. in the morning. And then if they want to, stay later or check in earlier or check out later, or if they want car space or if they want anything else on top of that, I actually charge for that. And I've had a few Airbnb hosts sort of say, how can you do that? How can you get away with that? And I'm like, well, I'm not being like not upfront about it. Everything is in the listing. If you don't like my listing, you don't have to. You can move on to a next one, and you don't have to book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking at your listing, and I did notice that, and I do think it's unusual for hosts to charge for early check-in and later check-out. I think what most people do is, if it's possible, if you don't have guests either coming in or you don't have guests leaving the same day, then I think most people will just allow it. But you have a different strategy. You make it very clear. For example, your check-in is 3 p.m., check-out 10, and then
Correct.
You say check-in 12 to 3 is $99, check-in 10 to 12 is $150, and so on, and the same for checking out. Mm-hmm. What's your experience with that? Like, do a lot of people use these options, or? Yeah,
absolutely. To be honest, I've had people in the past that haven't read my listings correctly, and you're looking at one of my listings right now. As you can see, it's quite long and quite detailed. And the reason why it's quite long and quite detailed is because I like to be transparent, and I don't want to give them, I want to answer all their questions so that when they book with me, they know we're both on the same page and we know where we stand. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, what happens is in quite a lot of cases, and I hate to say it, but it is quite a lot of cases, and I have to put my hand up and be honest and say, look, I don't read all the terms and conditions when I make a booking online. Mm-hmm. I really don't, because they're just so long, and I just don't have the time. And so I'll be honest. I also don't do that. But unfortunately, when it comes to something like this, what tends to happen, and I'd say maybe 60 to 70% actually don't read the listing. correctly. Well, they don't read the listing or the full listing. They might skim through it, or they might read, maybe the first 2 paragraphs or whatever. So in a lot of the times, they get quite irate at the fact that there are extra charges. So for example, I do charge the early check-in or the late checkout fees. I do charge for internet. I do charge for air conditioning remote. But again, the reason why those charges were brought up is, and again, yes, I do have it as a business, but it didn't start as a business to begin with. So everything that you see on my listing now has been as a result of what I actually went through. So I'll give you a perfect example. In the past, so the check-in time was 3 o'clock. And in the past, I'd get guests who'd say, I'll see you at 3. So now let's pretend that it takes me an hour to get to my apartments, okay? Mm-hmm. So I have to leave an hour. So if my check-in time is 3 o'clock, I would leave at around 2 o'clock to get there, right? Sometimes even a little bit earlier because, you've got to find parking and sometimes there could be traffic, and obviously I don't want to be late for my guest. So I would leave anywhere between an hour and a half earlier. Now, what would tend to happen is at 3 o'clock, I may or may not get a message at 3 o'clock. It could be 3:30 saying, sorry, my flight's late. I'm not going to be there till 5:30. Okay, great. So now I've left home at, say, 1:30. And now it's, 5:30 before their flight arrives. And then it's another half an hour to the airport, if not a little bit longer, because you've got to clear customs, you've got to collect your baggage, and you've got to hop in a taxi. So by the time they check in is about 6 or 6:30. In the past, so there's already 5 hours of my day that I just couldn't do anything else except sit there outside the apartment waiting for the guest. Do you see what I'm saying? In the past, it's actually been even worse because they've had delayed flights, or they were traveling, or they just decided to go and watch a movie or have dinner or see their friends or whatever, and then they literally ring me at like 10 o'clock at night going, okay, I'm here, where are you? So like I said, I don't I'm not even though Airbnb is my business, I don't feel that making that person and being, I guess, uneducated about, when you're going to check in doesn't set us up on the right footpath, to begin with. So that's why for me, those charges were brought, because it just kept on happening and happening and happening and happening. And I mean, at the beginning, once, twice, 3 times, I don't mind it happening, but when it constantly keeps on happening, and like I said, I have 11 properties, and a lot of the listings, I actually had the whole apartment and also each individual room. So there was a lot more listings than what you see now. I've actually sold 2 of the properties since. But do you see what I'm saying? So all of a sudden it becomes like quite a few properties to manage and so forth. Mm-hmm. And if I have to go through this every single time, as it stands, at my busiest, I probably got, and I would probably do anywhere between 2 to 5 check-ins a day. That would be at my busiest. So if you can just imagine that times, everybody being late, I wouldn't be doing anything else but just literally checking people in and out every single day, you know what I mean, which is ridiculous. So because of that, those check-ins have been put in place. Those check-in charges have been put in place. And again, I'm very transparent about it. It's on the listing. If you don't like it, please don't book it, Yeah. It's the same with the air conditioning remote charge. Obviously, I pay for the electricity. The electricity here in Australia, quite frankly, has literally doubled in the last 5 to 6 years. It's quite expensive, but unfortunately, and I have to be honest and say, I do this when I stay in hotels all the time. If it's summer, I'll have the aircon on. If it's winter, I will have the heater on, and I'll have it, on 24/7. And however, though, when I do leave the room, it is on a timer because you have to put your key in the slot, and it automatically cuts out. Unfortunately, in my properties, I don't have. I've looked into that. I can't get that for various reasons. Mainly strata building issues don't allow you to do that. And they've got all these other regulations and stuff, so I can't do that. And what actually happened was for example, on a studio that's quite small, say 40 square meter studio, in storage was just under $400, which is ridiculous when it should be about $150. Do you see what I'm saying? So again, you multiply that by 11 apartments, and if everybody does it, you can see what I mean, that it becomes a really, really, really massive electricity bill, which I don't feel that, I don't mind paying the electricity, don't get me wrong, but if you're going to sit there and you're going to have the aircon on 24/7, if you're going to leave the lights on 24/7, well, I think, you should be paying. But it was mainly the air conditioning remote that obviously chews a lot of electricity, and that it generates that higher cost. So, I did that for about 6 months, and then I thought, okay, this is just not practical. It's definitely eating into my profits and then some. I need to do something else about it. And then I came up with, okay, if you want the air conditioning remote, it's an extra $45 a week, which is probably on par. $45 to $50 a week is what it would cost if they were to run it every single, 24/7, so to speak. And I offered that, transparent, clear in the listing, saying if you would like the air conditioning remote, it's an extra $45 a week. And that was the reason why that happened. So this is what I'm saying. I don't make stuff up for the sake of me making extra money. All those things is because of my experience with running these properties as a full-time business for the last 3 years.
Wow, that's a lot of things to discuss here. I just want to go back real quick to what you said about guests like just showing up at the random time, expecting you to be there. Because I've had similar experiences.
Yeah.
And I think some of the people that are using Airbnb, especially the people that are new to Airbnb, sometimes they think it's like a hotel, right? That you can show up whatever time you want, and there's going to be somebody there behind the desk to check you in. And obviously, that's not the case. I think a lot of Airbnb users don't realize, what it is like to be a host, and they don't really think about it. So I know that Airbnb is trying to educate the users more, because this is something that's been raised by a lot of hosts. So they are trying to educate the travelers and let them know that they have to understand the position of the host and be on time, etc.
Yeah, I've actually spoken to Airbnb myself, because at one stage I was actually looking at collaborating with them and running some seminars where we would be educating the guests, with the correct etiquette, how to list the property, how to welcome the guests, how to get a better listing, how to write up a listing, how to, deal with customer complaints if there were any, or how to avoid customer complaints to begin with. I think that's a great thing by Airbnb, and I strongly recommend that they look into having these educational evenings, I guess, 1 or 2 hours where they go through those things, just so that, you just avoid them to happen.
Mm-hmm. Right. The other thing I wanted to get back to is, so those extra charges that you have, how do people pay for those? Do they pay in cash or?
It depends. Most of the time they are paid through Airbnb. So they'll say to me, okay, yes, so what happens is, as soon as they make a booking, I automatically send them a very long detailed email, which goes through everything again, tells them the charges again, asks them, if you would like this, if you would like that, let me know. And what happens is they will get back to me and they'll say, yeah, we'd like to have the internet and the air conditioning remote, and we need 3 days parking, for example. How do we do that? So in basis of what they need, looking at let's call it my extras menu, I then send them a request for payment of extra services through Airbnb. Sometimes though, they decide they prefer to pay me directly in cash, which I know it's not a preferred method through Airbnb. But again, at the end of the day, if I've sent a request and they haven't paid, but then they show up on my doorstep with the money, I'm not going to say, well, go and accept it through through Airbnb.
But hold on a second, you can charge for those amenities through Airbnb?
Absolutely, yes.
How long has that been the case? Because I noticed on my listing in Amsterdam, that option showed up just a few weeks ago.
Oh, really? No, for here in Sydney, it's been for quite some time. So it's basically just, the way that I do it, you can do it, I think you can do it 2 ways, but the way that I do it is I just basically go to airbnb.com, obviously in my case, .au/resolutions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And then so I go through the resolutions tool. That's kind of, I think that's, well, I was told by Airbnb customer service that that's sort of the way to do it. Mm-hmm. And you just pick your listing, and then you will, there's a drop down menu where you sort of say you can also refund them. So you can either refund them, you can get money from them for extra services, or you can claim money for damages. There's about 4 or 5 things that you can do. And the one that I use is request payment for extra services, and then you just send them the email, the request on the amount of money and obviously the reason for it. All they have to do is accept it, and boom, it's done.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I was aware of that one, but now there's also another option to do it, where you can literally put in extra services, and you don't have to go through the resolution tool.
Okay, I didn't know about that. I've been using the resolution tool because, like I said, that was what originally I was instructed to do by a customer service team. But no, that's great. I think it's definitely a good tool to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it too. Awesome. So let's talk about your experiences with the guests. Are most experiences positive? Are there any really negative experiences, or do you have any remarkable stories? Or
okay, so where I live, I also rent out. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I also rent my second bedroom, I should say. And then the other apartments, they're just apartments. Like I said, they are my apartments that I rent purely for Airbnb. So in most of the cases, I've never really had issues. The only issues were really due to the fact that they didn't read the listing correctly. So it would be things like, for example, the extra charges, definitely, like I said, it would definitely irate some clients, which is, so it's like they book, the charges on the listing, it's like they'd make a booking, and then I send them, like I said, I send them my welcome email, which basically says, thank you for having made the booking. And then I go through, check in, check out, key collection, how to get there, other charges, if they need anything else to let me know, blah, blah, blah. It's a very long, detailed email. And again, they wouldn't read that. And then it's like, I didn't realize you have a charge. My flight doesn't land till 9 o'clock. I didn't realize you have a charge. So that has happened quite a lot. I have to be honest and say that. And unfortunately, it kind of puts them off in a bad mood to begin with. So they're really, let's just call it, they're pissed basically of having to pay $150, which I totally can understand. But my issue is if you didn't want to pay it, why did you make the booking? So they come with that. How can I say it? They're already upset even before they get here, if you know what I mean. If you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And what happens after that is it literally doesn't take them much to continue on that downward spiral of, the place wasn't clean enough, even though I offer 100% cleaning satisfaction guarantee. So basically, with all my listings, if you're not happy with I will get another cleaner within 24 hours to clean it to your liking, and obviously there's no extra charge to you for that. But again, they don't sort of see that. So, for example, I had a guest almost 3 weeks ago now to the 180 degrees Harbour View, which you've seen listing. And one of the things he was going on about was that the bed was too close to the ceiling. Okay. Right. But, A, there were reviews about that. B, you have a look at the photos. So, do you know what I mean? So he's there, he's going, the bed's too close to the ceiling. I'm not comfortable to climb up the bed. And I'm like, well, it's a loft bed. It was in the listing. It was in the photographs. If you want to cancel the listing, not a problem. But, there's no way you're getting a refund. So a lot of the cases, like I said, it starts off with one thing and then it just rolls into something else. So from one little thing, then they decide to oh, I don't like the cleaning. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like that. That's too bright. That's too dark. The building is too old. You didn't tell me the building was old. And I'm like, well, you never asked the building. You never asked me to tell you how old the building was. So a lot of the times when they start off bad, it's going to be a bad experience for them. And it's quite sad because, everything could have been avoided by them just actually, reading the listing. So yes, I have had, honestly, quite a few people, like I said, probably 60 to 70% not read the listing, and they have been, unhappy little 60 to 70% of people that have stayed in my apartments, or because they haven't read the listings. Sometimes, though, also their expectations, I guess, it's kind of like, paying peanuts but getting the Sheraton 5-star treatment. And, being Airbnb listings, and people living in them, like I've had one guy say, Aly's place was dirty and she works from her, she works from home. Well, yeah, I do work from home. So therefore there will be a computer and there will be paperwork. And it just so happened that, I have a very unique kitchen which has a massive bench top, and that's where my computer was. So obviously he didn't like the fact that my computer was on my kitchen table and I was working from home. Because again, he didn't ask. He just assumed that obviously I'd be working 9 to 5 and he'd have the whole house to himself. Again, another one booked, and as soon as he booked, he's like, oh, I didn't see that you've got cats. I'm allergic to cats. Can I get a refund? Well, no, because at the time that I was speaking to you, I was also negotiating with a few people for a longer period of time, but you booked in first. Therefore, they've booked elsewhere. Therefore, I've lost money. Because let's go back to the whole thing. I am doing this as a business. And no, you cannot have your money back. So again, when they come in, they are already, upset about the fact that, there's cats, I'm allergic, or I have to pay the extra fee. Or another funny one actually is my apartment that I'm living in that has 2 rooms. I've had a lot of them going, oh, I didn't realize this was a private room. I thought it was the whole penthouse apartment. And I'm like, yeah, you're really going to get the whole penthouse apartment for like 130 whatever bucks a night. And you didn't read that I've got 3 cats and I'm also living in the other room next door, and again, it's like, when they start like that, I don't know. I think it's all about the education, but when they, some people are just like that. At the end of the day, when money is related, the related issue or the main factor, everybody's going to get an opinion. And most people, when they're obviously losing money, as in their cases, or they're not getting what they think the value for money is, i.e., well, I didn't realize it was a private room. I wanted the whole apartment for that amount of money. Now I don't want to pay, that amount for just one room. Again, that's not my problem. That was that's their fault. If they didn't read the listing, there is nothing I can do about it. I mean, a few times when I've had vacancy, I was more than happy to upgrade them because I wouldn't want to be living with them during that time whilst they're all irate anyway. So a lot of the times I have done that. But there were times where I literally was, fully booked, like Mardi Gras recently, it happened again. And there was actually nowhere I could put them in. So it's like, well, you either stay here for the week or, you go, but there's no way I'm giving you a refund.
And what do you do to prevent these problems? Do you adjust your listing and sort of like put on the top, you put something like, please note, this is just one room, it's not the full apartment, or something like that to prevent these kind of things? Or
look, like I said, I think I have been more than clear on my listings. What you've just mentioned now, I actually never even thought about it. But quite frankly, I don't feel that it's something that I need to do because, I'm not there to pick out at what every different individual's possible, scenario could be for them not reading the, I can't think of everything that they're going to think that could possibly go wrong and therefore me try to prevent it. It's not about that. I don't think Airbnb is about that either. Airbnb is a platform where, you list your property, you set out the terms and conditions the guest reads it, they accept it, they make the booking, boom, it's done. If I have to sit there and think about and write about, I mean, I'm a real estate agent. How many real estate agents or how many listings have you seen on properties for sale or for rent where they say, oh, and you know what, this is a really shithole. It's got, you know, mold in the bathroom, broken skirting boards, you know, the backyard is the fence is falling down, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to advertise the crappiest features. I'm not saying that I'm advertising only the best features. I'm saying that I'm advertising the listing to what I consider it to be clear and transparent. Now, everybody's got their own definition of what clear and transparent is. Like I said, my listing is so long that it doesn't leave much more to the imagination. And if they've got questions, I do say, please, if you've got any questions, ask me before you make a booking. But I'm not going to, you know, go and list and say, hey, by the way, this is, you know, this building is 35 years old, or this building is 5 years old, or, you know, do you understand what I'm saying, where I'm coming from?
No, I understand your point, and you know, I agree. I'm just thinking if there's one thing that like a lot of people miss, and it might be beneficial to you from a business perspective to sort of put it in bold or put it in a place where people will look, because you're right. Like a lot of people, especially if the listing's long, they won't read all the way to the bottom, but they'll usually read the top part. So
well, yeah. Well, this is why I did do that with a lot of my with all of my listings, where it says, you know, the base rate is shown. If you would like any extras, I don't know if I didn't know you could do bold. Can you do bold in a listing?
Actually, I don't think you can actually. What I meant is like capital letters, or put some stars, or you know, just something to get the attention.
Yeah, no, I definitely have the stars part. As you can see on my listing, and I do make it I try to make it clear with, you know, with the lines and with the stars for them to sort of see it more clearly, I guess.
Yeah.
But again, I you know, honestly, 60 to 70% of them don't read it.
Yeah.
Don't read it. So, you know.
Right. So that's pretty interesting to hear all this. I think a lot of hosts can probably relate to a lot of things you're saying. Definitely, people not reading the listing and not reading the information is probably the number one complaint that hosts have. And I have similar experience. Like I have a whole guidebook that I send to people, you know, and it has like pictures of the map of how to get to my place. It's really, you know, explained in a lot of detail, but sometimes I still get messages from people who say, "Oh, I just arrived at the airport. How do I get to your apartment?" You know what I mean? And I'm thinking,
yeah, like, well, I know. I've been there, done that.
It's on the listing. I sent you a 17-page guidebook, you know, that I spent a lot of time on, like perfecting. Yeah. And now you're asking me, how do you get to the apartment? It's funny. Yeah. Anyway,
nothing surprises me anymore though from Airbnb guests. It really doesn't. Really doesn't. You know.
So, Aly, I have one more question before we finish up the episode. So I noticed on one of your listings you have a one negative review. It's pretty long. I think it's somebody who thought that your studio was too small. It wasn't good for four people. And
yeah, it's really funny because there was only two of them, and the studio sleeps four people perfectly. Two in the loft bed, two underneath in the sofa bed. Mm-hmm. So you know their comment to say it doesn't sleep four when you've only booked for two, I just see that as a below the belt comment. You know, I have had a lot of people say, oh, you know, the studios look bigger in the photos. Well, again, you know, you show me a property that are, you know, I mean, I've used Airbnb photographers, and I say that. I said, look, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way, but we've used Airbnb photographers. The furniture is as it is represented in the photographs. Nothing's been changed, moved, added, or deleted. So again, you know, but this is what I'm saying. They'll go, oh, the room's too small. the bed's too high to the ceiling, and then they just keep on going after that. It's not clean enough, and then they just go on a roll. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's this particular person has a lot of things to say. Just the things you mentioned. It's probably someone who's already, like you said, who's already kind of pissed off before the person arrives. But also sometimes, I mean, some people are never happy. You know, like I've had, I think. I don't know how many people I've hosted, but it's got to be like, over 150 groups, maybe close to 200. I've only had one person who really didn't like my apartment, but he didn't like anything about it. Like, he complained about everything. He complained about things that, are just completely random. However, I did take his feedback seriously, and I did make some changes to my apartment based on his feedback. So in the end, I think it was a good experience for me because in the end, it did make my apartment better. But yeah, I mean, some people expect a 5-star hotel, and that's not what they're going to get. So they're going to complain. But my question really is, first of all, do you think that negative review had a bad effect on your listing, on your bookings? Because I know a lot of hosts worry about this,
No, I personally, no. For me, how I think about it, like I said, I don't. And the reason why is because that is that person's opinion at that time. Now, at that time, you don't know what he was going through or she was going through. You don't know if he had a fight with the girlfriend or with the wife and he was just in a shitty, bad mood. You don't know, maybe he got laid off his work, or maybe he had a death in the family, or maybe he just woke up grumpy. You just don't know. So I'm not going to base my decision, like if I was to read, I'm going into America at the end of the year, for example, I'm going to Florida. And if I read a review that's negative in any way, shape or form, I don't care. I couldn't care less because that's that person's experience. It's not my experience, and I choose my experience to be a good, positive one. So I don't care the fact that, that person had whatever, with whatever the review said, with that other person. My experience is my experience. And that's just how I personally think. I know that there's a lot of people that don't think like me. And, that's why it's great, because the world is great because it's so diverse and everybody should have their own opinion, and everybody does have their own opinion. And that's why, the world is so great. But personally for me, the reviews do not bother me or affect me at all whatsoever. With regards to my properties, they still get booked. So again, I don't care about them. Very, very, very probably maybe not even a handful of times I've had guests inquire before they make a booking and they say, is it true that whatever, you charge for air conditioning? And I said, yeah. And the reason is blah, 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 blah. And when I give them my reason, they're like, oh, okay, I totally understand. Not a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
so for me,
sense.
no. Yeah.
I think a bad review combined with a bunch of good ones is not such a big deal. I think, especially when you respond to it in a professional manner, because I think you're right. Like, people do understand that people are different, and some people like certain things, some people don't. Some people are more eager to complain than others.
Yeah,
and
I would rather them be honest with me. So, for example, I've had a guy that checked into my the Sydney apartment near Hyde Park, the one with the red couch. And he basically, literally, we opened the door, I walked him through it, and he said, thank you, but this is not for me. And I said, oh, okay. I said, what is wrong with it? And he goes, well, it's not what I expected. I said, okay, well, what did you expect? And he goes, well, it's not what I expected. And I said, all right, what did you expect? He goes, well, I kind of wanted it more like a hotel type. And I'm like, well, this is not a hotel. Airbnb, is not, if you wanted a hotel, you perhaps should have booked a hotel. But I do appreciate you telling me right now that it's not, you don't like it, as opposed to stay in it and then, bitch and moan and send me a negative complaint because, and then, whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've also, and one thing that really, really, really annoys me, And again, I like yourself, I take feedback seriously, and I did, we put all these different things in place. I used to also have guests that would stay, so the booking would be for 5 days or for 10 days or for, 17 days. And during that time, I would not hear from them at all whatsoever. Okay. Now, at the time, this was in the beginning, at the time, I didn't send them emails regularly to check up on them to see how they're going, if they need anything, etc. And then literally, after they've checked out, within 1 or 2 days later, I would get, a 5-page complaint letter as to what was wrong in the apartment. And I'm thinking, are you freaking serious? You stay in the place 5 days, 10 days, 14 days, 17 days, and you don't say boo. And then after you've checked out, you want a refund because that wasn't there, that was too bright, that was too small, that was too big, that was not clean enough, that was that. Why couldn't you, seriously, let's be honest. And like I said, I've never used Airbnb as a guest. I've only used it as a host, right? Mm-hmm. But if I was to book somewhere, anywhere, whether it's a hotel, whether it's an Airbnb, whether it's whatever, and I'm having issues, I would not stay in that apartment for that amount of time and then complain afterwards. That's just stupid to do that. You've got to be a complete idiot, in my opinion, to do that. So obviously in that case, you are just wanting a refund, and Airbnb gives refunds, so therefore you're going to rot the system and try to get a refund. And that's happened to me quite a few times as well.
That's funny the way you word this. What I do because I've noticed this too. But I've never had people send me a lot of complaints, but I did notice a few times, how there's this section in the review where you can give some private feedback to your host.
Yes.
So I've had people leave me a good review, but then they'll mention 1 or 2 small things in that section, right? In that private feedback section. And often this is something that I could have helped them solve if they would have told me. So
exactly.
So what I do now is I basically as soon as my guests arrive, usually the day after they arrive, I just send them a message and say hey, I hope you're enjoying your stay and that everything's okay. And I encourage them to tell me if there's if there's something wrong with it, because a lot of people are just
exactly the same.
Yeah, because a lot of people are sort of hesitant to reach out. So that's definitely something I've noticed too. All right, Aly, thank you so much for being on the show. It was really interesting to talk to you.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And
we'll put your listings in the show notes so people can check them out. If you go to Sydney, check out Aly's listings. Did you have a Facebook page or something where you have all your listings, or?
Sure. So it's www.facebook.com/global short stays.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Aly. And for all the listeners, every week we'll have another episode. So if you want to know more about Airbnb hosting, you can go to getpaidforyourpad.com. We have tons of information out there. And you can also go to Amazon.com, where you can get the book. It's on Kindle, the Kindle version, and we also have a paperback version. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your